The universe can be a vast, unfeeling void, but sometimes, in the deepest corners of despair, a single soul's refusal to break becomes a silent act of war. Our story begins with one such soul. Elara. Ever felt a place so steeped in despair it physically choked you? Imagine that, for 20 long years. The slave pens on Xylos, a forgotten rock at the galaxy's bitter edge, reeked of unwashed bodies, hopelessness, and something else, a metallic tang of fear that never faded. Elara, a Cygnian, huddled in her cramped cell, knees to her chest, trying to shrink into nothing. Her people, the Cygnians, were known for their empathy, an almost tangible inner light. A cruel irony, really. That very light made them prized captives, their spirits a delicacy for monsters like Forelag the Despoiler, her new master. And now, he had summoned her. 20 years of servitude, of being traded and tormented, and still, that summons sent ice through her veins. What fresh hell awaited? The heavy doors shrieked open. A hulking guard, all brute force and sneering contempt, barked, "On your feet, Cygnian. The master demands you." Each word was a hammer blow. She rose, the chains a familiar, hateful weight. Her mind flashed back, a sun-drenched village, laughter, her parents' faces, then smoke, screams, the slaver's brutal efficiency. Ripped away. Just a child. Now this. As the guard hauled her through dank corridors, past cells filled with broken wretches who wouldn't meet her gaze, Elara's fingers brushed against a tiny, almost invisible spiral etched into the cold metal of her cuff, the secret symbol of her lost home, a Cygnian glyph for endure. It was her silent defiance, the core of her resilience. Her only weapon in this universe of cruelty. They thought her a mere plaything, didn't they? But what if they were wrong? What if the captive held a power they couldn't fathom? The ornate doors to Forelag's audience chamber loomed. Nausea churned as the oppressive heat and a pungent, sickly sweet musk, Forelag's signature slime, washed over her. The chamber was a grotesque parody of opulence, filled with sycophants. And there he was. Forelag the Despoiler, a mountain of decaying flesh, sprawled obscenely on his dais. His bulging, orange eyes, cold and ancient, fixed on her. "Ah, my sweet new morsel," his voice, a wet rasp, boozed. "Come closer." Shoved forward, she stumbled, chains rattling, but kept her gaze down. A pudgy, claw-tipped finger tilted her chin up. "Exquisite," he rumbled. "But first, you must be trained." "Broken." "I will enjoy watching that famous Cygnian light fade from your eyes." Elara trembled, but her spirit, that stubborn Cygnian spark, refused to be snuffed out. She braced herself, a silent vow echoing in the shattered remnants of her heart. They could break her body, but not the unyielding core of her being. Or so she desperately prayed. What awaited her in the heart of this den of depravity, and could that fragile prayer ever be answered? That fragile prayer Elara clung to. It hung by a thread as Forelag the Despoiler dismissed her with a flick of his clawed hand, his chilling order echoing in the vast chamber, "Take her to Overseer Malachi. Begin her lessons." Lessons. What a quaint term for the systematic dismantling of a soul. And who was this Malachi, an architect of her impending torment? The first lesson in breaking a spirit, a voice like flaking rust declared from the shadows of the pleasure gardens, a grotesque misnomer for Xylos's grimmest training grounds, is to shatter its illusions. Overseer Malachi stepped into the dim, flickering light. He wasn't a hulking brute like the usual guards. No, Malachi was whip-thin, his movements precise, his eyes like chips of obsidian that missed nothing. His cruelty wasn't just about physical pain, it was a meticulous, psychological warfare. He was a connoisseur of despair. Have you ever met someone who genuinely enjoys the suffering of others? It's a cold, hard truth of the universe. Such beings exist. Malachi was one. The training began. Days bled into an agonizing cycle of torment. It wasn't just the sting of the neuronic whip that left her nerves screaming, though that was ever present. It was the calculated deprivation of sleep, of food, of dignity. Malachi would force Alara and other newly acquired slaves to perform meaningless, back-breaking tasks until they collapsed, only to be roused for more. He'd isolate them, then flood their senses with disorienting lights and sounds. Psychological warfare, pure and simple. He'd whisper insidious lies, trying to turn slave against slave, to make them believe hope was a fool's dream, that their capture was their own fault. Some believed it. Why wouldn't they? When you're starved and beaten, your mind starts to play tricks on you, doesn't it? One sweltering Xylo's afternoon, during a forced labor detail under the twin, unforgiving suns, Alara saw it. A young Tarsian male, barely more than a boy, his scaled skin already dull with exhaustion, simply stopped. He dropped his heavy load of jagged ore, looked up at the searing sky, and a single tear traced a path through the grime on his cheek. Malachi was on him in an instant. Not with the whip, not immediately. He spoke, his voice a venomous caress. Tired, little lizard. Giving up so soon. Disappointing. Forelag expects resilience. Then, the overseer made an example. The Tarsian's agonized screams echoed for what felt like an eternity. Alara squeezed her eyes shut, the Signian glyph on her cuff digging into her palm. That boy's broken spirit became a horrifying testament to Malachi's methods. But it didn't break Alara. No. It hardened something within her. A cold, diamond-hard defiance. Could you witness that and not feel something ignite inside you, a promise to never let them win? Yet, even in this desolate landscape of cruelty, the universe sometimes offers a whisper of rebellion. One evening, while cleaning the guards' mess hall, a demeaning task designed to remind them of their place, Alara overheard two of the lesser guards, their voices low. They weren't all like Malachi, some were just brutes, others just apathetic. These two sounded nervous. Did you hear the whispers from the outer settlements? One muttered. About the star shadow again. They say it strikes without warning, frees the unjustly held. The other scoffed, but his voice wavered. Myths. Boogeymen for slavers. A star shadow. A liberator. Probably just desperate rumors, Alara thought, but the seed was planted. A tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of hope. What if it wasn't a myth? What if someone out there was fighting back? It's amazing what a little bit of forbidden knowledge can do for a spirit on the edge, right? This sliver of hope became her shield during the next session with Malachi. He'd chosen a secluded grove, the air thick with the cloying scent of strange, Xylan flora. He chained her to a post, his smile a razor-thin line. Let's see if we can find that famous Signian light today, shall we? And extinguish it. The neuronic whip uncoiled with a sinister hiss. This time, the torment was relentless, designed to push her beyond endurance. Pain lanced through her, white-hot, again and again. Despair, cold and cloying, threatened to drown her. She almost let go. Her vision blurred. Her secret Signian symbol felt like a distant memory. But then, through the red haze of agony, she remembered the Tarsian boy. The whispers of the star shadow. Her parents' faces. And that tiny, indomitable spark within her, the essence of her Cygnian heritage, flared. They wanted her light. They would never have it. As Malachi paused, his chest heaving slightly from the exertion, Elara, drawing on her innate Cygnian empathy, sensed a flicker of boredom. Or perhaps a momentary distraction in his cold gaze as he glanced towards a sound in the distance. It was almost nothing. Imperceptible. But in that split second, as the whip began its next descent, she subtly shifted her weight, a desperate, agile movement learned from a childhood spent climbing the singing trees of Cygnus Prime. The blow still landed, still seared, but it missed its intended, more damaging target by a hair's breadth. A tiny victory. Unseen by him. But she knew. It was a secret. A testament to her will. Malachi, none the wiser, merely grunted, perhaps misinterpreting her movement as a flinch of pain. He thought he was winning. Little did he know. He unchained her, his expression one of smug satisfaction. Better, he purred. But still so much fire. Forelag will be entertained. He then delivered the final blow of the day, not with his whip, but with words. You're improving so well, in fact, that Lord Forelag has a special honor for you. You are to be presented at the Grand Crimson Nebula Gala. His newest, most exquisite prize. The Crimson Nebula Gala. The most decadent, depraved event in this sector of the galaxy. A spectacle of Forelag's power and cruelty. And she was to be paraded. Humiliated. Another pretty bauble for a monster. A fresh wave of dread, colder than any Xylan night, washed over Elara. But as Malachi dragged her away, a new, hard knot of determination was forming within her. If this gala was to be her stage, amidst the splendor and power of the galaxy's vilest, perhaps, just perhaps, the universe was about to witness a different kind of performance. What, after all, could one supposedly broken Cygnian slave possibly do? They were about to find out she wasn't as broken as they thought. And so, Elara, the Cygnian slave who was decidedly not as broken as her tormentors believed, found herself being prepared for that grand, grotesque stage, the Crimson Nebula Gala. What awaited her there? More gilded cages, more predatory eyes. You bet. But also, perhaps, a chance. A very, very slim one. They adorned her in wisps of crimson silk that mocked her Cygnian heritage, the color of her people's ceremonial robes, now twisted into a symbol of her servitude. Jewels, cold and heavy, were clasped around her neck and wrists, each one a glittering testament to Forelag the Despoiler's obscene wealth and her status as his latest prize. Funny, isn't it, how the most beautiful things can be made so ugly by the hands that hold them? As she was led onto a raised platform in the heart of Forelag's throne room, the sheer, overwhelming opulence of the gala hit her like a physical blow. It's often said that the most dangerous lies are spoken in rooms filled with glittering truths, and this room was practically blinding. The air thrummed with a discordant symphony of alien music and raucous laughter. Hundreds of beings from across the sector, a dizzying array of species, all preened and postured. Hulking, four-armed brutes from the Cthar Nebula waved tankards of frothing ale. Ethereal, bioluminescent Jari floated through the throng, their pheromones leaving many guests glassy-eyed with induced euphoria. And in the center of it all, naturally, presided Forelag himself, his bloated form jiggling with mirth as he gestured obscenely at some lewd performance. Elara stood motionless, a statue of unwilling grace, enduring the collective leer of the room. Each appraising glance felt like a violation, stripping away another layer of her dignity. But beneath the carefully constructed mask of submission, her mind raced. She observed. she catalogued. Who were these people? What were their weaknesses? Information, she knew, was a weapon. Even for a slave. Especially for a slave. Don't you think sometimes the quietest people see the most? Suddenly, a hush, a palpable shift in the room's energy, rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. Even Forelag paused his grotesque revelry. A new group had arrived. And these weren't your average fawning sycophants. Oh no. These individuals strode in with a confident, almost predatory swagger. A dozen of them, clad in sleek, midnight black armor that seemed to drink the light, their faces concealed behind featureless, smoke-visored helmets. The Shadow Syndicate. Infamous mercenaries, whispered to be the unseen master's personal enforcers. Their leader, taller than the rest, his armor subtly accented with crimson lines that pulsed with a faint, unsettling rhythm, moved directly towards Forelag's dais. The crowd parted before him like water before a dreadnought. This had to be Commander Valerius. His reputation preceded him, brilliant, ruthless, and utterly loyal to his shadowy employer. Lord Forelag, Valerius's voice, amplified by his helmet, was a smooth, resonant baritone, yet it carried an undeniable edge of steel. It was the kind of voice that could charm a star serpent out of its coils or order an execution with equal ease. I trust the journey finds you, well. The pleasantry was a thin veneer over something much colder. Forelag shifted his bulk, his small, greedy eyes glinting. Commander Valerius. Always a pleasure to welcome an emissary of the esteemed unseen master. Even Forelag, a tyrant in his own right, seemed to choose his words carefully. Interesting, no? What kind of power did this unseen master wield to make even Forelag show a sliver of deference? My master sends his regards, Valerius continued, his helmeted head inclining slightly. And an offer. A matter of mutual interest. Regarding certain artifacts of considerable historical, and dare I say, intrinsic value. Artifacts? Ilara's senses sharpened. This was no mere social call. This was galactic politics at its grimiest. What could these artifacts be? And why would the unseen master, a figure of almost mythical power, need Forelag's help to secure them? The questions hung heavy in the air. Forelag leaned forward, his chins quivering with interest. Artifacts, you say? Go on, Commander. You have my undivided attention. The unseen master has long admired your unique network and resources in the more unregulated territories of the Outer Rim, Lord Forelag, Valerius said, his tone implying much more than his words stated. He seeks your assistance in locating and retrieving several pieces. Relics of a forgotten age. In return for your cooperation, he is prepared to offer 10 prime, resource-rich worlds in the recently pacified Krellian sector. Unspoiled. Ripe for exploitation. A collective gasp, quickly stifled, went through the assembled guests. 10 prime worlds. Such an offer was astronomical, almost unheard of. This wasn't just a trade, this was the kind of deal that could shift the balance of power in entire quadrants. Ilara, from her vantage point, saw the naked avarice light up Forelag's face. But as Valerius spoke, she strained her ears, trying to catch more. Standing near a cluster of chattering dignitaries trying to appear nonchalant yet obviously eavesdropping, she caught a snippet not meant for Forelag's ears. One of Valerius's lieutenants, his voice a low hiss into his comm, ensure the secondary protocol is active. Once the artifacts are confirmed, the master wants no loose ends. No loose ends. A chill deeper than any Xylan winter snaked down Ilara's spine. This wasn't a partnership, it sounded like a prelude to betrayal. The Shadow Syndicate weren't just mercenaries, they were assassins. Her fear of them, already significant, intensified. These people played for keeps. And then, the truly unnerving thing happened. Valerius, as if sensing her heightened attention, slowly turned his helmeted head. His visor seemed to lock onto her. It wasn't the lecherous gaze she was accustomed to. No, this was different. It was a cold, calculating assessment. Analytical. As if he were cataloging her, not as a woman, but as something else. A piece on a game board. A potential asset. Or perhaps, he recognized something in her bearing, the subtle defiance she couldn't fully mask, the spark of her Cygnian heritage. Could he see the fire she desperately tried to hide? It was a terrifying thought. For a moment, she felt completely exposed, her deepest secrets laid bare before this enigmatic commander. What did he see? Why her? This was a secret she couldn't afford for him to uncover. Forlag, oblivious, was still mulling over the offer, his greed warring with his innate caution. An intriguing proposition, Commander, he rumbled finally. Most intriguing. But such matters require deliberation. Enjoy the hospitality of my gala. We shall speak again on the morrow. Valerius gave another slight bow. As you wish, Lord Forlag. The unseen master is patient. He turned, his cloak swirling, and led his contingent away, melting back into the throng as if they were shadows themselves. The music swelled, the grotesque revelry attempted to resume its prior intensity, but for Elara, the galaxy had just tilted on its axis. Powerful, ruthless players were moving their pieces on a board far grander than Xylo's. And she, a mere slave, a Cygnian pawn in their deadly game, was somehow caught in the nascent storm. What cataclysm was about to be unleashed, and could there possibly be any escape from the dark designs of such formidable, merciless beings? The air in Forlag's throne room, already thick with intrigue and unspoken threats, suddenly felt like a coiled serpent about to strike. Elara, a Cygnian pawn on a galactic chessboard, felt the shift, the universe holding its breath. What cataclysm was about to be unleashed? Could anyone escape the dark designs of these merciless beings? She didn't have to wonder for long. It began not with a roar, but with a single, piercing scream that sliced through the cacophony of the gala. High-pitched. Agonized. It was followed by another, then another. Chaos erupted. Instantaneously. Have you ever seen true panic? It's a terrifying wave, stripping away all pretense. Dignitaries scrambled, knocking over tables laden with exotic food and drink. The festive music died, replaced by shouts and the unmistakable, sharp crackle of energy weapons. Dark figures, the Shadow Syndicate, poured into the hall from previously unseen entrances, moving with a ruthless, terrifying efficiency. They weren't just causing chaos, this was a coordinated strike. Each stun bolt, each tranquilizer dart, found its mark with surgical precision, dropping Forlag's personal guards and many of the more influential guests in silent heaps. This wasn't a simple takeover, this felt like a purge. What was Valerius truly after? Commander Valerius himself strode through the pandemonium as if he were taking a leisurely stroll through a botanical garden. No wasted movement. His twin energy pistols, suddenly in his hands, spat crimson bolts that disabled Forlag's inner circle of protectors. The Overlord, moments before a figure of grotesque power, now cowered behind a shield of his most terrified sycophants, his jowled face a mask of pure terror. He gabbled pleas, promises, anything. Valerius didn't even seem to hear him. He gestured, and a squad of his Shadow Syndicate warriors peeled off, vaulting onto the dais, restraint cuffs and stun batons at the ready. It seemed Forlag's reign was about to end, not with a bang, but with the whimpering submission Valerius clearly expected. But was Valerius planning to be a new, perhaps even more insidious, master of Xylos? The thought sent a fresh wave of dread through Alara. Sometimes, the devil you know. Just as Valerius's men reached the cowering Forlag, a new sound tore through the air, a deep, rhythmic thrumming that shook the very foundations of the palace. It was different. Not the chaotic energy of the Syndicate's attack. This was controlled. Powerful. Every head, including Valerius's helmeted one, snapped upwards. Descending from the night sky, visible through the grand dome of the throne room, was a squadron of ships. Sleek. Predatory. But their markings were unknown. They weren't Shadow Syndicate. Who were these newcomers? Could things possibly get any worse, or was this hope? The ship settled onto the palace grounds with pinpoint precision, disgorging dozens more figures. These warriors were clad in stark white and silver armor that gleamed even in the dim, chaotic light, a stark contrast to the Syndicate's oppressive black. They moved with a disciplined grace, securing the perimeter, their movements crisp, efficient, but somehow, less about terror and more about order. The Solar Vanguard. Legends whispered among the oppressed, a human-led special forces unit known for appearing where they were least expected and most needed. But were they truly here for liberation? From the lead ship, a new figure emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the coiled grace of a natural leader. He was human, that much was clear even from a distance. As he strode into the throne room, the chaos seemed to momentarily pause, as if the universe itself was watching. His close-cropped silver hair caught the light, and his eyes, the color of storm clouds, were intense, piercing. He surveyed the scene, the cowering Forlag, the ruthless Syndicate, the terrified slaves, his expression one of grim satisfaction, yet tinged with a deep weariness, as if he'd seen too many scenes like this. This was Sergeant Jax Orion. And he looked like he meant business. Valerius, to his credit, didn't flinch. Unexpected guests, his amplified voice cut through the sudden lull. The Solar Vanguard, I presume. A long way from your usual patrol routes, Sergeant. Jax Orion didn't waste words. Valerius. Your little party is over. Stand down. His voice was a calm, commanding baritone. But the undercurrent of authority was unmistakable. This wasn't a request. What happened next was a blur of contained violence. The Solar Vanguard engaged the Shadow Syndicate, not with the Syndicate's brutal, sweeping attacks, but with precise, targeted takedowns. It was like watching a storm of focused light push back an encroaching darkness. Jax Orion was a whirlwind. He moved with a speed and agility that was almost breathtaking, his customized pulse rifle a blur in his hands. He wasn't just a soldier, he was an artist of combat, each movement with purpose, disabling Syndicate members with non-lethal efficiency where possible, but utterly decisive when necessary. Alara watched, heart hammering, as he systematically fought his way across the chamber, his trajectory clear. He was coming for the platform. For her. And then their eyes met. Across the chaos, through the smoke and the strobing lights of weapons fire. It was electric. A jolt, a recognition that went deeper than words, deeper than understanding. Not just rescuer and rescued. Something more. Fated. Could it be? After all this suffering, Was this the universe finally offering not just an escape, but a connection? Jax reached her platform, deflecting a stray shot with an almost casual flick of his wrist. He offered no grand speech, just a small, reassuring smile that crinkled the corners of his intense eyes. "Name's Jax," he said, his voice somehow cutting through the din. He reached out, and with a deft twist of his hands, the heavy slave shackles that had bound Alara for so long clattered to the floor. Free. The word was so immense, she could barely comprehend it. But the battle wasn't over. Four-legged, seeing his chance in the three-way melee, tried to scuttle away, shielded by a few remaining loyal guards. And Valerius, always the opportunist, seemed to be weighing his options: fight, flee, or find a new advantage. It was then, in that critical moment of shifting tides, that Alara acted. They say the greatest weapon isn't a blaster, but courage. She proved it. Near her platform, a young Zendarian slave, no older than she was when first captured, had frozen in terror, directly in the path of a collapsing ornate pillar dislodged by an explosion. Without a second thought, Alara, fueled by adrenaline and that deep Signian empathy that allowed her to feel the impending danger, shoved him clear. The pillar crashed down where he'd stood moments before. She didn't just wait to be rescued, she became part of the rescue. Jax, witnessing her bravery even as he fought, gave her a look of profound admiration. Incredible, right? Even in chains, the will to protect others can shine through. That single act seemed to turn the final tide. With Four-Leg's escape cut off by Jax's quick thinking, a perfectly aimed shot that disabled his personal transport sled, and Valerius realizing this battle was no longer to his advantage, he and his remaining syndicate members made a tactical, if hasty, retreat into the Xylos Undercity, a problem for another day. The fight was essentially over. The Solar Vanguard secured the palace with practiced ease. Four-Leg the Despoiler, the tyrant of Xylos, was finally in restraints, his reign of terror concluded. Cheers, ragged and tearful, began to erupt from the newly liberated slaves. Freedom. It was real. With Four-Leg's tyranny shattered, a new dawn seemed possible. But as Alara stood amidst the cheering, weeping crowds, her hand in Jax's, a touch that felt as natural and right as breathing, she knew this was not just an ending, but a terrifying, exhilarating beginning. The chains were broken, but what did it mean to truly be free, and what future could a former slave and a starfaring soldier possibly build together? The chains were broken, the tyrant Four-Leg overthrown. But as Alara stood amidst the emotional chaos of liberation on Xylos, Jax Orion's hand a warm, steady anchor in hers, she knew this was just the explosive start of a terrifying, exhilarating new chapter. What did it truly mean to be free after a lifetime of enslavement? And what kind of shared future could a former Signian slave, marked by unspeakable cruelty, possibly forge with a battle-hardened sergeant of the Solar Vanguard? These questions swirled in her mind as they boarded his ship, the Hope's Beacon. The silence of space, they say, can be a deafening roar after a lifetime of screams. Or, it can be the sound of healing. For Alara, the journey from Xylos was a blur of both. The hum of the Vanguard ship was a lullaby compared to the cacophony of Four-Leg's palace. The Solar Vanguard medics, with their calm efficiency and gentle hands, tended to her physical wounds, the fading bruises, the raw ache in her limbs. But the deeper scars, the ones etched onto her soul, those would take longer. Much longer. How do you even begin to heal from that kind of trauma, from having your spirit systematically brutalized for 2 decades? Jax was a constant. A quiet presence. He never pushed, never pried. He simply was. He'd find her staring out at the star-strewn void from an observation deck, 1,000-yard stare in her eyes, and he wouldn't say much. Maybe just bring her a warm nutrient broth or drape a blanket over her shoulders. Small gestures. But they spoke volumes, didn't they? In the ship's modest hydroponics bay, surrounded by the quiet scent of growing things, a scent she hadn't realized she'd missed so desperately, they shared quiet moments. He'd point out constellations she'd only ever dreamed of, telling her their Terran names, their stories. And she, in turn, would haltingly describe the starlit skies of Cygnus Prime, her voice often thick with unshed tears. One evening, under the soft glow of the artificial stars in the ship's main common area, Jax finally shared a piece of himself. He spoke of a younger sister, lost years ago during a brutal pirate raid on a fledgling colony world. He'd been just a rookie then, powerless to stop it. "I fight," he said, his voice low, his storm-cloud eyes filled with an old pain, because no one else should feel that helpless. Because everyone deserves a chance to see the next sunrise. And just like that, Alara understood the fire in him, the relentless drive. It wasn't just duty, it was a deeply personal crusade. It made him more than just a rescuer, it made him human. Relatable. And her heart, so long starved for genuine connection, ached for him. His vulnerability became her bridge. Slowly, haltingly, Alara began to open up. She spoke of the endless days of torment under Overseer Malachi, the constant fear, the crushing despair. She even whispered about the tiny Cygnian glyph, her secret symbol of endurance, and how it had become her lifeline. Jax listened, his gaze never leaving hers, his empathy a palpable warmth that enveloped her. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't say he understood, because how could he, truly? But he heard her. And in being heard, truly heard, Alara felt the first fragile tendrils of genuine healing take root. It's incredible what a little trust and an open heart can do, isn't it? But not all scars are invisible, and not all enemies are defeated. Just as a fragile peace began to settle over Alara, news crackled through the ship's comms. Commander Valerius and a significant contingent of the Shadow Syndicate had evaded the Solar Vanguard's planetary sweep of Xylos, disappearing into the lawless asteroid fields of the Kaido's expanse. Worse, intelligence chatter confirmed that the Unseen Master was now fully aware of the Vanguard's intervention, Forlag's downfall, and Alara's liberation. A chill returned to Alara's bones. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. What did a shadowy figure like the Unseen Master want with her? Why was her freedom such a concern? The answer, or at least a terrifying hint of it, came a few days later. A coded, high-frequency transmission, originating from deep within Syndicate space, was partially intercepted by the Hope's Beacon's sharp-eared comms officer. Most of it was indecipherable, layers of encryption too complex to crack quickly. But one fragmented phrase, repeated several times, made it through: Cygnian resonant matrix, crucial for the prime artifact, secure the asset at all costs. A Cygnian resonant matrix. The prime artifact. Secure the asset, her. What in the void did it mean? Were her people, her very essence, somehow key to these dangerous artifacts Valerius had spoken of? This was the secret, the terrifying unknown, that now loomed over her newfound safety. It seemed her past wasn't done with her yet. You just can't escape some things, can you? The revelation, coupled with the lingering trauma, triggered a violent nightmare that night. Alara woke with a strangled scream, thrashing against unseen chains, the phantom stench of Forlag's slime filling her senses. Jax was there in an instant, his presence solid and reassuring in the dim emergency lighting of her small cabin. He didn't try to restrain her physically. Instead, he spoke her name, his voice a low, calming anchor in the storm of her terror. He talked her down, reminding her where she was, that she was safe, that forelag was gone. When the shudders finally subsided, she found herself weeping in his arms, a storm of grief and fear and a desperate, clinging hope. He just held her, offering silent comfort, his strength a shield. And in that moment of profound vulnerability, their emotional connection, already so strong, deepened into something unbreakable. Trust. It was a precious, fragile thing, and he had earned every last shred of it. Their love, forged in the crucible of conflict and tempered by shared vulnerability, felt as boundless as the stars around them. Yet, the specter of the unseen master, the unresolved fate of Valerius, and the chilling mystery of the Signian connection to these prime artifacts, cast a faint, persistent shadow. As the Hope's beacon finally charted a course towards the gleaming heart of the Galactic Alliance, Elara knew their greatest adventure was not behind them, but waiting, coiled and ready, to unfold. Would their bond, this incredible, unexpected love, be enough to face the trials that destiny still had in store for them? Their incredible, unexpected love, forged in fire and tempered by shared vulnerability, had carried them across the void. As the Hope's beacon broke from hyperspace, Elara wondered if that bond would be enough for the trials destiny still surely had in store. Then she saw it. The citadel of 1,000 worlds, capital of the Galactic Alliance, shimmering before them, a breathtaking tapestry of soaring crystalline towers, emerald green parks suspended in zero gravity, and rivers of light that were star lanes teeming with ships from every known species. It was a beacon of what could be, a universe away from the grim despair of Xylos. Some say home is a place. Others know it's a person. For Elara, gazing at this vibrant, hopeful future with Jax Orion by her side, she realized with a breathtaking surge of emotion, it was finally both. Tears welled in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of an almost unbearable joy. This wasn't just freedom, this was possibility. An entire galaxy of it. Jax, sensing her emotion, gently took her hand, his touch of familiar comfort, an unbreakable bond. He led her to the ship's main observation deck, which offered an unparalleled, panoramic view of the capital world in all its jeweled splendor. The crew of the Hope's beacon, those brave souls of the solar vanguard who had become like a surrogate family, seemed to melt away, giving them a quiet moment. Smart crew. He didn't make a grand speech. That wasn't Jax's way. Instead, he turned her to face him, his storm cloud eyes, usually so intense with focus, now soft and filled with a devotion that took her breath away. From a small pocket in his uniform, he pulled out not a glittering jewel, but a simple, hand-carved wooden token, a miniature, perfectly rendered Signian starbloom, its petals intricately detailed. It was the flower of her lost home, a symbol of resilience and new beginnings. How did he even? Elara, his voice was a low rumble, resonating deep within her soul, I know what you've lost. I can't replace it. But maybe we can build something new. Together. You are my heart, my courage, my reason for every sunrise. Without you, I'm just adrift. He didn't quite go down on one knee, but the intensity in his gaze was more powerful than any formal gesture. Will you, Elara of Cygnus Prime, be my guiding star? Will you marry me? The words, so heartfelt, so him, shattered the last of her defenses. Yes, she breathed, the single word a sacred vow, tears streaming freely now, washing away the grime of years. Oh, Jax, yes. 1,000 times, yes. He slipped the starbloom carving onto a thin chain he produced, fastening it around her neck. It settled against her skin, warm and real. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, a kiss that sealed their promise, a kiss that tasted of starlight and a hopeful future. They knew the shadows still lingered. The unseen master remained a chilling enigma, Valerius and his syndicate a lurking threat, and the mystery of the Signian artifacts and Alara's connection to them was an unanswered, potentially dangerous, question. Rebuilding lives, forging true peace, these would be their ongoing battles. But standing there, hand in hand, gazing out at the vibrant promise of the Galactic Alliance, they would face it all together. Their love story, a beacon against the vastness of space and the shadows of the past, was truly just beginning. Their journey was a testament that even when stars seem to fall, true love can light the way to a new constellation. So, what star will you choose to follow?